What's up, everybody? What's up? It's AJ with Launchpad. Man, I'm excited today to watch this and be here with you guys and talk about this episode number 5. Now, I know I advertised this as the first episode, but we actually had like 4 other episodes before this. But welcome, you guys, to This Week in Workforce Development. My name is AJ Abraham Jenkins. I'm the CEO of Launchpad, and really excited today to talk with you guys about some strategies for workforce development. First, I also want to introduce someone I got in the room, Jeremy Roston. Jeremy, you're not on air, but you can say what's up, or they can probably hear you.
Hi, everybody. Good morning.
And Jeremy is going to be fielding the questions for me, and so I'm excited about just being able to talk about these topics. So quick little housekeeping for you guys before we start talking about things. Number one, I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to ask questions. If you're watching this on our website, in order to ask questions, you have to actually go to the YouTube page. So just click the video or click the YouTube button. What is that, Jeremy, in the lower right-hand side, or where is that?
The YouTube button is in the lower right-hand corner of the page.
Okay, and you can see it too right now?
Yes.
We're live, we're good?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So lower right-hand side of the page, if you click that, it's going to take you to YouTube or Google Hangouts, and you can ask questions there. Number two, some of you are going to email me and say, oh, I couldn't see that thing in high definition, or the quality wasn't very good, or spotty. That's because you've got it on low definition on your settings. So, because we've got like super fast bandwidth here in our Irvine office. So how do you change that? You can change that quality or the settings in the lower right-hand corner as well. There's a little thing that says viewing settings or quality or something like that, and you can change that to HD. And once you do that, you're going to get the best HD quality that YouTube and Google has to offer these days. So that being said, housekeeping out of the way. As I mentioned to you guys, this show, the purpose of this show really is to, first and foremost for our customers, I want to welcome all of our customers throughout the country, those in the Midwest, specific shout out to those in Skills, Wisconsin, and in the wonderful state of Wisconsin who are on this show. Also out here on the West Coast, we've got clients up and down California, in LA. Want to give a special shout out to our LA County Office of Education, LACO friends, also up in San Francisco in the Bay Area. We've got a couple of clients there, and then a few on the East Coast. Just want to give a shout out to everybody. Thank you all for participating, and thank you for submitting questions. We got a ton of questions from you guys, so we're going to talk about those. This show is really going to be short and to the point. We're going to do 30-minute shows approximately every 2 weeks. If I'm on vacation, depending on if I'm traveling, I might not be able to do the show. But we're going to try to do it every 2 weeks and just share with you guys informally thoughts and ideas about workforce development, what's going on, community development, economic development, those types of issues. So, I get ready for the ride, enjoy the ride, because it's going to be exciting. First 15 minutes, I'm going to share with you guys my ideas, my thoughts. I plan to have guests periodically. So we're going to bring on folks and Google Hangout with some other people, professionals, and just people, experts in the industry who can share their wisdom, not just workforce development, but I'm going to bring business people in, entrepreneurs, investors, people that can look at job creation from all the different perspectives, not just from the government or nonprofit perspective. So the first 15 minutes is going to be really just narrative, sharing with you guys some tips and strategies. And then the second 15 minutes is going to be all about questions. It's going to be questions that come in from you guys. Jeremy's going to be fielding questions on his side, posting them on the chat. For those of you who want, you can get on the chat and also view them there. So that being said, I want to dive into my topic today. And, it's always hard, Jeremy, the first show is always hard to do the topics because you want to cover everything, right? You want to cover everything you possibly can in the show. And I always make that mistake whenever I do trainings or speaking. I put too much content into the first show. So that being said, I'm going to try to narrow this down. I'm actually not going to cover everything that I have. I'm going to save stuff for the next show, episode number 6. I want to talk today about the market forces that are impacting workforce development. And this is relevant to anybody, whether you're an executive director, you're a policymaker, you're a job developer, you're a case manager. This is all relevant stuff here. So the first thing I want to talk about is the job market. I haven't talked with a lot of you in maybe the past, 3 or 4 months as far as, being out speaking. I haven't had a speaking engagement in about the past 3 or 4 months. So a lot has been changing in the job market. And you guys are seeing this right now. You guys are on the front lines of seeing this. But, you know, one of the biggest dynamics that I'm seeing in the job market right now is we are seeing a rapid increase in the amount of hiring, a rapid increase in the number of jobs out there. The job market is definitely picking up. And I think the biggest thing is that the pendulum, you know, we used to say this in the staffing industry, the pendulum is swung back to the supply side. And what I mean by that is that there's so much demand out there. There's so much demand for job seekers and candidates, depending on the job market, right? Every job market is different, but there's so much demand out there from employers that it's really putting pressure on the supply side. But one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing is that the demand is from, basically we're seeing kind of a bifurcation in the job market. We're seeing a lot of demand on the high end, right? So professionals, executive level, engineering types, technology, high level technology programmers. We're seeing a lot of demand on that side. And then also we're seeing a lot of demand on the entry level, entry skill side, right? So retail, and we're seeing demand in construction, and we're seeing demand in, you know, hourly paying jobs and minimum wage. But the challenge is really in these middle skill jobs. The middle skill jobs, and I've been reading a lot of articles about this. This is where I think a lot of you guys are probably seeing that challenge. It's that, how do we get that person who may be working in a minimum wage job, trying to make ends meet, and we elevate them to a higher skilled, middle skilled job. These are the types, this is, at the end of the day, these are the middle class jobs that we're trying to get people into. They don't require a college degree for the most part, but they do require skills. And I think the biggest challenge that you guys are facing in the job market right now, and what I'm seeing, is that employers' expectations are still set a certain way. Employers are still expecting people for these middle skilled jobs. They've got these expectations that are really outsized for these middle skilled jobs. And so this is one of the biggest market forces, I think the biggest challenge that you guys are facing out there. And I've seen this a lot, you know, when I was, even when we had, you know, even during the boom economy back in the early 2000s and mid 2000s and before the Great Recession, when unemployment was like under 4%, we saw that, you know, employers were definitely hiring a lot of people and there was a lot of demand out there, but they still had a high expectations. And what you're going to see, I think we're going to be in this middle skills kind of glut right now for the foreseeable future. And the reason for that is because it really takes us to get to about, you know, 4% or full unemployment or full employment in order for employers to really start making adjustments in their hiring requirements, right? And really starting to kind of say, okay, I'll interview that person if they don't have the college degree, or I'll interview that person if they don't have, you know, if they don't have all the experience, I'm willing to train them. So right now, the biggest challenge you guys are going to be facing is getting these employers to adjust their expectations. And I talk about that. I've been talking about that since day one about the demand-driven model. So I'm going to talk with you guys. There's some questions that were specifically about that I'm going to talk about. The second thing I want to talk to you about, the second market force, and this one I get excited to talk about, but also I think it's something that really you guys out there in the workforce development space are really going to have to start making a difference. And this is adjusting your strategies for technology. You guys, technology is changing everything, absolutely everything that you're doing. And most importantly, there's two things I want to talk about how technology is changing workforce development. Number one, it's changing the way you engage with businesses, okay? You can't engage with businesses the same old way. It's not gonna work. So number one, and just kind of write this down, it's changing the way you are gonna engage with businesses. The number two way that technology is changing things is it's changing how job seekers should be searching for jobs. So let's start with number one. How is it changing the way you engage with businesses? You know, when I started out in workforce development, in staffing, and actually as a job developer back in 2000, my goodness, 15 years ago, it's crazy. When I started as a job developer, and I would pick up the phone, right? So I'd pick up the phone and I'd call employers. That was my main way of reaching out to employers. That's the main way that I would get it. I would cold call employers, and I was really good at it. I'm still good at it. Hey, I'm pretty good at calling people, right? That's one of my skills, right? You know, people always say I'm great over the phone, I'm great in person. I can write pretty good emails too. But, you know, that used to be the primary way to prospect for business. But I'll tell you right now, hands down, it doesn't work. You can't cold call anymore. Businesses are so sophisticated in turning off salespeople. And at the end of the day, you guys, job developers, you guys are salespeople. So when you go out and engage businesses, you really have to think more creatively about how you're going to do this. The biggest trend that I'm seeing right now in business development, and this isn't just job development or recruiting or staffing, I mean, this is in all industries, is what we're hearing. This big theme is what we're hearing is called social selling. And I recommend all of you guys go online, Google social selling. You'll learn about that. There's a lot of information on Salesforce's website. There's a lot of information on LinkedIn. A lot of the technology companies have really adopted social selling. And basically what social selling is, it's about creating awareness about what you do to the business community, particularly if it's business to business, right? So what you're doing, you're selling business services out to businesses and employers. This is totally applicable. So social selling basically means what I'm doing is I'm going out there and I'm reaching out to businesses, but I'm engaging with them online. My first touch points are online. It may be on LinkedIn, it may be on YouTube, it may be on SlideShare, it may be on Twitter. This is the first place that you engage with a business. And what you're really trying to do is make yourself an expert. You become a thought leader in your community about workforce development. So if you're in the Madison area and you're Madison, Wisconsin, and you're trying to engage businesses and get businesses to reach out to you, well, really businesses should be finding you online and reaching out to you. You should be sharing relevant content, curating content, creating information like I'm doing, videos, blogs, webinars, ebooks, getting that content, that information out there to the businesses, and what we call is reach and teach. You connect with the businesses online and you teach them, you educate them about workforce development and how the services that you provide can help them with their human capital needs. This is the biggest trend we're seeing in business right now on how to get new customers, how to get new employers, and I think it's so vital. The other thing that we are seeing right now, the other big trend that I talked about earlier was the job search. And this is really how you coach your job seekers. As we talked about earlier, we've got this middle skills gap or glut right now where it's hard to get people into these middle skills jobs. We've got a lot of jobs on the entry level and we've got a lot of jobs on the high level, right? I think the biggest trend that we are seeing right now in workforce development is the use of social job sites and social media. In fact, there was a study that came out, and I can share this, we can post this on our blog, that showed over 57% of companies are using social media to hire people these days. Okay, so they're not just hiring, executives on LinkedIn anymore. They're now starting to hire the middle skills jobs. These are the jobs that you're trying to move the folks from entry level into. They're hiring these people using social media, using Twitter, using LinkedIn, using mobile. So we have to really educate our job seekers. When you're sitting down as a case manager, as a job developer, if that person is looking for a job that's outside of construction or outside of a blue collar type of job, but if it's a green collar or white collar, or if it's a professional job, they got to be on LinkedIn. I'm one of my family members right now is looking for a job, and she doesn't have a LinkedIn account. And that was the first thing I told her is you've got to get onto LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is becoming the #1 source for recruitment for recruiters, executive recruiters, staffing companies. You've got to get on there. Monster, in fact, the traditional job boards we're seeing traditional job boards declining in business, the number of job postings, while websites such as LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Twitter, these non-traditional job sites are increasing in activity and increasing in traffic. And this is another important point for workforce development agencies, particularly the state agencies that have the big job boards or the labor exchanges. We're advising our clients and the state agencies, you've got to start moving to a social-based labor exchange. And so social media and technology is hugely affecting the job market and the way your job seekers do their job search. And like I said, most of your job seekers are going to be applying for jobs on their mobile device. And so you've got to be able to adapt to that and cater to that. And this is how you can help your businesses. When you're going out and talking to employers, you can educate them on this and say most job seekers apply for jobs on their mobile device. And we can help you. We can advise you on how to get more candidates by utilizing these technologies. So that's a huge trend. The third trend. So here's this thing we talked about earlier, entry-level candidates. And one of the things I thought about is, here in Orange County, we're seeing a lot of construction. And Jeremy, I don't know about you. When I'm driving around, I'm seeing a lot of construction sites. I'm seeing a lot of construction going on. And one of the things I always think about when I'm driving by, I see the men and women working at these sites, is I say, how many of these men and women were working these same jobs 5 years ago, 10 years ago, right before the recession? And basically, many of these folks got laid off in their construction jobs. They were unemployed for 5 or 6 years. Some of them had benefits, some of them just got by, and now they're going right back into that same construction job. And literally, they're making the same money they were making 6, 7 years ago, right? That's the challenge that we're dealing with, is we have people that are not seeing career mobility, right? And I think the biggest challenge in career mobility is we are in what I call a skills-based economy. And what that means is that employers are looking for people with increased skills and increased experience. And so when we see a guy or a lady that's working in a construction job or working in manufacturing or working in a warehouse, and they work on that job, here's what's going to happen is if we don't figure out a way to not only employ them right now, but then to help them gradually increase their skills, what's going to happen is that the next recession, they're going to get laid off again, right? They're making 12, 13 bucks an hour. They're going to get laid off again. And then 3 or 4 years, when the economy picks up, they're going to get hired right back into that same job. So over a 10, 15, 20-year period, they've had no career mobility. And this is a huge area where I believe workforce development, you guys can make an impact, and we really can move the needle on this. So how do we have career mobility? Well, here's the next theme here that I want to talk about: market forces. There's a huge change going on in education right now, and how people are accessing education, consuming education, and the type of education people are getting. And I really believe that workforce development, you guys can be really making a difference in the way we educate our workforce and get them skilled up. And one of the biggest things that we are seeing, and I call this is agile kind of education. I'll give you an example of this, is that, there's a great company out there out of the Bay Area called Udacity, 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 something like that. Check them out. Udacity is offering what they call nano degrees. And these are short, quick, kind of agile degrees you can get in programming, you can get in different skill sets, but you can get this degree in less than 30 days. You can get this certificate in less than 30 days. And in fact, they were smart. They went to the businesses. So they went to Google, they went to Salesforce, they went to LinkedIn, they went to Yahoo, and they said, what are the skills that you need? And we're gonna write the curriculum, we're gonna put it online, and we're gonna give people specific certificates in these skills, and then we're gonna refer these candidates back to you. So Udacity is making money selling the education, right? And then they're sending people back to these employers with these quick degrees. And here's the thing: if you train people in these jobs and it takes you 6 months to train them, that employer would have hired their people already. So these little nano degrees, these short, agile, quick certificates, whether it's online education, community colleges, private technical schools, nano degrees, web-based schools such as Udacity, Khan Academy, these different organizations that are offering these. I think the next trend, I really think the next big thing, Jeremy, is that guy or that lady who's in that construction job, while they're working that job, we've got to figure out a way that we continue to educate them and skill them up while they're in the job. So that maybe we say, hey, to the employer, we're going to help get them, maybe, instead of them being, entry-level manufacturing, we're going to teach them, how they can do CNC machine, become a CNC machinist, or we can teach them programming, or we can teach them a higher level skill while they're still in that job, and we stay engaged with them, so that if they do get laid off, hopefully they don't, but if they do get laid off, they can find a new job at a higher level. And that's career mobility. And that's what we've got to start working on as the economy starts to pick up. So, all right, the first 15 minutes, I wanted to cover these topics. I'm going to post this information on our blog. But what I'd like to do right now is we've got some questions that are starting to come in. And so I wanted to talk about some of the questions and cover some of these that we got from some of the people that are on the show, or some of our guests. So, Jeremy, I think we've got some questions that have come in. I'm trying to see them here. Were you able to post those? Huh. I'm not seeing them coming up.
It might be a slight delay.
Okay. There we go. All right, so the first question, hopefully you guys can see that. The first question is from my good friend Miguel out here in Los Angeles. Miguel asks, how can people with high school diplomas find work? Miguel, I love that question. Thank you. And that came in from our Facebook page. In fact, also I want to pause here, you guys. I encourage all of you guys, join me on Facebook, join me on Twitter. I'm on Facebook, Abraham Jenkins. It's actually my personal Facebook account, but if I've met you, I know you, I'm going to add you. You know, my wife kind of gets on me. She's like, you got all your clients on your Facebook, you know, account now. So that's okay, because, you know, I really want to engage with you guys at that level. So Miguel, thank you for posting that on Facebook. So how can people with high school diplomas find work right now? I think this is a great question. The first thing I'm going to mention to you, you know, Miguel, is you're looking at a guy that does not have a college degree, right? I'm the only, in fact, I'm the only guy in the company here at Launchpad that does not have a college degree. And so I think it's absolutely possible. And I've, you know, I was thinking about this question. I've gotten 4 jobs with 2 companies that all those companies had, and when earlier in my career, all those companies required a college education, and I got those jobs. And yes, you guys know me, I'm a hustler. You know, I'm an entrepreneur. I know how to hustle. So I have that advantage. Maybe not everybody is as outgoing and as aggressive as I am. But, you know, I think right now, especially for those middle skill jobs, right? So the entry level jobs, people can get those jobs without a college degree. And if a company is asking for a college degree for an entry level or minimum wage job, I mean, that's just crazy. So most of those companies aren't requiring a college degree for entry level positions. The way that the middle skill jobs or these middle income jobs or you know, those types of jobs that we're looking for with that require a college degree, I think the way that we can get around that, there are a couple of main strategies. The number one thing that I've always talked about is, as a job developer, you should always be engaging. So a couple things, let me take a step back here. If that job seeker is looking for that job on their own, the first thing they need to do with every job is identify what are those top 3 skill sets that they're looking for. Any employer, when they post a job, they always typically have the top 2 or 3 things that they're looking for. And I believe that if that candidate has on their resume or on their application emphasizes that they have those skills, oftentimes the employer is going to overlook them not having a college degree. Case in point, I'll give you an example. Programmers. We are seeing a huge trend right now where employers are saying, you know, if you can program in this language, if you can program in Java or, you know, .NET or, you know, Apex or, you know, Python or whatever these programming languages are, if you have experience and knowledge in doing that, they're going to look at you as a candidate because they are prioritizing experience over education and experience over someone having a degree but not having experience. In fact, I've hired a lot of people out of college, directly out of college, and I've hired interns oftentimes. And I'll be honest, a lot of the folks that have experience are much more productive out the gate than folks who just have a college degree. So we're emphasizing experience and skills. Now, once you get someone who has that, you've got to be able to, as a job developer, market them out to the market and to the job market. And I think this is where you really have to be able to engage at the high level with the decision makers. And I've talked about this with many of you, how you have to be engaging with the decision makers and asking that question, saying, hey, let me ask you this. If I find a candidate that has 2 of those 3 things for that position, how important is that college degree? Why are you looking for that college degree? Because if I find someone that has, you know, 2 years of experience or they recently got a certificate, would you be interested in that individual? So it's really emphasizing experience, relevant experience over college degree, over that college education. Now, if that individual, that job seeker, tries to go out and apply for jobs and they don't have the resume written correctly and they don't know how to present themselves to the candidate and they don't have a job developer working on their behalf, they're up against, you know, the wall there. It's really difficult for you just to apply for a job out of the blue, not have that college degree. And number one reason is many of these online systems will basically, you know, Jeremy, the HRIS systems, they just rule you out altogether. So your resume doesn't even get to the recruiter's desk because their IT system just screens your resume out. So you've got to do those things I just talked about. But Miguel, that's a great question because that really addresses the issues we're having with these middle skill jobs and getting people with high school degrees into these programs, these training programs, quick and targeted training programs, and then getting them presented to these employers quickly and presented to the decision makers. All right, so the next question, is how can we make OJT more attractive? Let me select that one. So perfect question, and this question came in from Wanda Palmer out in Wisconsin. So Wanda, thank you so much. I think OJT is interesting. And the reason I think OJT is interesting is I've actually looked at this from my business perspective. I've hired a couple people on OJT. And I really don't think OJT, on the job training, is really that appealing. As a business owner, as an entrepreneur, and I work with a lot of business owners in my EO group. There's dozens of CEOs that I meet with on a monthly basis here in my EO group here in Orange County. And I'll tell you this, most business owners and high-level managers, they're not going to hire somebody if you present a candidate to them and say, hey, I've got a candidate that doesn't meet your qualifications, doesn't have the experience, but hey, I'm going to give you, an OJT for 90 days. You're not really incentivizing me to want to hire that person, because basically what you're saying is I'm going to pay for the lack of quality that I'm sending you. And I know I'm being harsh. I'm being real here, though. I'm speaking to you from a perspective of an entrepreneur or a business owner or a hiring manager. That OJT does not close the deal for me. I think the way that OJT really needs to be used, OJT can sweeten the pot a little bit, but you have to be able to sell that employer on why they should hire that candidate. And if you think about it, you really have to parse out for them. If I sit down with an employer and I say, hey, what are some of the, if I present to them 5 candidates, I really want to ask them, hey, Jeremy, tell me about the 5 candidates that you just interviewed. What are the reasons why you didn't hire that person? You really have to get, peel back the layers of the onion with that employer and ask them and say, hey, what's the hesitation that you have in order to hire this candidate right now? And find out what are those reasons that they're hesitating, and then address each one of those reasons. And I'll tell you from my perspective, the biggest anxiety that I have in hiring a new person is if I invest training time, if I invest time in training that individual, am I going to lose my investment? Because it's really a risk reward. When you look at employment, all of the risk is on the employer's side. The candidate, they can go work for a company. Let's say they go work for AT&T, they go work for Target, they get trained for 90 days. They haven't been able to be productive, because the reality is the first 6 months, most new hires aren't that productive in a position. And so as an employer, I've invested all this time, all this money, all this resource. I've trained them. They don't work out. I lose. As the employer, I lose. So that's risk. And you, as a business services or a job developer, you've got to figure out, how do you minimize that risk? That is how you get them to hire people, and how you use OJT. So what I do is I would say, here's one thing I would love to see employers or business services and workforce agencies do. I would love to see workforce agencies say, hey, let's do this. Your biggest concern is that if you spend 6 months training this person, that you're going to have, that person isn't, maybe they don't work out, maybe they leave, they take that experience to your competitor. Let's do this. What I'd like to do is I would like to offer you an opportunity where we're going to assist in training that candidate. So we're going to place them, and this is really only going to work for positions where you're placing maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 people. It's a call center, it's a manufacturing, wherever they've got a large volume of positions, or maybe it's an employer who's open-minded. But my thoughts here is, you go to that employer and basically say, why don't we do this? We will take the burden of training that person in that skill. So we're going to learn your business. We're going to learn what types of skills you need. Maybe you need them to have better communication skills. Maybe you need them to have better computer skills, whatever those skills are. And why don't we do this? Let's propose that person working a 30-hour work week. And 10 of those hours, they're going to come over to the local college, and we're going to train them. So what's happening is you've taken the burden of training off of my shoulders. So what happens is, and this is a model that they use in Europe, they use this in Germany. We're seeing this with apprenticeship programs, where part of the employment is them actually working, and then 25% of that is them actually learning. And that learning component is taken off the shoulders of the employment. You reduce that risk. I'm not making that investment in training them, and they're only working 30 hours. I'm only paying 30 hours. That other 10 hours is coming from the OJT money, and then they're getting that training. When I think of that, if someone offered that to me and said, hey, they'll come 30 hours a week, no big deal. Okay, not 40, it's 30, but you're training them for me, and every day that they come back, or every week they come back, they have new skills, that's awesome. From an employer's perspective, I think that's awesome. So this is just one idea of how do you take something like OJT, be creative in workforce development, and apply it a little differently. We've got one more question here. Let's see here. We answered the question from Miguel. This one is from, my good friend, my best friend out in Wisconsin, Sue Gleason. One issue that she's heard a lot recently is businesses. Let me select this one. So this is a question from Sue Gleason. One issue I've heard a lot recently, that businesses want the perfect candidate. And I think we've saved the best for last. And you know, Sue, such a great question. I think what we've talked about here kind of addresses some of these challenges. And you and I have talked about this a lot. The reality is that the demand-driven model really is a tactical model. It really requires you to engage with that employer and to work with the decision makers at the employer to get them to adjust how they're looking at candidates. And the first thing I would do is, number one reason that businesses, this goes back to that big philosophical issue with the middle skills challenge and that middle skills gap, is that employers are still, we're in that economy where employers still have that high expectation. Unemployment is not low enough yet where they'll just take anybody. So they're being more picky, they're scrutinizing resumes. So what I would do when I'm sitting down with that employer is I'm gonna ask them, hey, what are the top 2 or 3 things that you're looking for? Are you looking for a college degree? Are you looking for 3 to 5 years of experience? Are you trying not to pay too much? And I split up each one of those and I say, okay, thank you for sharing with me those 3 requirements. Now let me ask you this. I always pose to them that hypothetical question. And I start to propose hypotheticals. I say, if we offer you 2 or 3 of those things that you're looking for, would you be willing to interview this candidate? If we help you with training, would you be open to this? And then the other biggest thing that I try to do, this is the biggest thing that you guys can do in workforce development, is that if you are presenting candidates via resume to an employer who is not, who's overcritical or too picky, they're making their decision based off that resume. They're not making their decision based off of a live human being. And so I always like to use, you guys call them hiring events, I call them company ins or company outs. You need to figure out a way to take that resume of that candidate and turn it into a live person in front of that employer. And the best way to do that is to say, hey, I know you're really busy, employer. I know you've got a lot going on. Let's do this. You've looked at a couple of resumes. I think, we haven't found the perfect match, or it hasn't been the perfect match. Let's do this. I'd like for you to come out to our site, and I want to have you interview 3 to 5 candidates and meet some of these people. Because I think if you can get these candidates face to face, you put that face with a name and they can see that person, that makes the biggest difference. And I used to have stats. We would have up to 50% placement ratios when we got employers in front of the job seekers or job seekers in front of the employers. So I think the biggest thing you can do is continue to do those hiring events. And they don't have to be, I see on Chatter, you guys post hiring events for, staffing agencies, for Manpower, for Apple One or Adecco, or, Company Target is having a huge hiring event. You guys can do a hiring event for an employer who just has 3 or 4 openings. You can go out to their job and say, I'm going to schedule, interviews with 5 candidates for you so you can meet them back to back to back. Because what happens is that candidate who doesn't have the stellar resume, but they interview really well, or they've got a great personality, all of a sudden that employer now can see and hear that person face to face, and they have a new perspective. And I've done that all the time. I've interviewed candidates where, the resume wasn't that great, but when I met them in person, they were amazing. They were terrific. So you've got to get past the resume and get them in front. I think hiring events are a great way, and you've got to parse out their needs. So thank you guys so much. I want to keep this under 30 minutes. I went a little long, 2 minutes long, but I hope this was of value. And like I mentioned earlier, you guys, please feel free to post questions. You can post them live while we're talking right now. You can post those questions live on the Hangout, but you can also post them on my Facebook, on LinkedIn. You can email me. You can put them on Twitter. If you put them on Twitter, remember to @ me, @ Abraham Jenkins, so I get them. Or you can post them on Chatter, but remember to @ me, @ Abraham Jenkins, for those of our clients that have me on there. But please feel free to submit questions. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about tactical strategies. For those of you who are using the Launchpad and Salesforce platform, we're going to go a little bit into tactical strategies and how you can use the platform to be more efficient and be more effective. Again, I'll answer any questions on our show. This is all for you guys. So thank you very much. Hope you guys have a wonderful week, rest of the week, a wonderful weekend. And thanks for watching episode number 5 of This Week in Workforce Development.